thank our international partners who are present here, IRI, NDI, Venice Commission, and others who have contributed a lot throughout many years to the democratic development of Georgia. Well, our situation is very complex. I can't take out separately the political party financing without going into the details of the current state of democracy in the country, because right now we have authoritarian type of government, anti-Western government. One person is totally controlling all state institutions. And I'm going to speak more on the role of the political corruption and shadow money, which has huge influence on the politics. And we can't avoid discussions on that. That's what I wanted to say. So 3 years ago, Georgia was a champion, as all of you know, champion in democratic reforms. We were leaders in the associated trio, but unfortunately today, democratic reforms are halted and we are 2 steps behind Ukraine and Moldova. Russian law, which was recently adopted in the country, has formalized authoritarian type of governance in the country and change of the foreign policy. So we have anti-Western authoritarian leadership, and ahead of very decisive elections, which is taking place in October. This year we have 0 independent institutions and unfortunately no legal or political instruments which can ensure conduct of free and fair elections. Unfortunately, in this ongoing clash between democracy and authoritarianism, our government has placed Georgia on the side of Russia. We have no checks and balances. I'm not speaking about public and Georgians because, as it was mentioned by Mr. Nix, 90% of Georgians support country's European integration, but unfortunately it's the government who is dragging country back to the Russian orbit. So there are no checks and balances, no functional separation of powers. We have one person who has illegally consolidated, he holds actually absolute powers. He has illegally consolidated those powers and is governing countries through various illegal means. I would like to point out just 3 of them: organized crime, political corruption, and shadow money, which has huge influence on the political process, especially during pre-election campaign, and propaganda and disinformation, which was covered by many of the colleagues here. So he has full control of state institutions, including anti-corruption institutions and anti-corruption bureau, which is newly created. It has a function of monitoring of the political party financing, but unfortunately, these powers were transferred to him from more or less independent state audit office, and current anti-corruption bureau is not independent. So his chair is appointed by the prime minister, who is loyal to the oligarchs. So there are serious issues of independence. Also, there is a violent mob operating in the country, which is unfortunately supported and financed directly by the government. Political intimidation, systemic threats, systemic pressure, violence is unfortunately a widespread practice, especially during a pre-election campaign. So propaganda channels of the government-controlled propaganda channels cover approximately 80% of the information network. So government has huge influence. They are controlling the so-called trolls and bots and so-called experts who are sitting on the government payroll, and these people have significant influence on creating the false public opinion in the country. Also, another dimension I would like to mention, Russian-style discourse on protection of sovereignty and traditional values, which is creeping into narratives, and I would say it's widely applied by the government. 2 most recent examples which we had in Georgia, it was the adoption of the Russian law, the so-called law on the transparency of foreign influence, and the second anti-LGBT law, the so-called law on the protection of the family values. So both of these legislation, they have totally different, their main goal is the manipulation with the public opinion and influencing the outcome of the election. Also, government is trying to create a false image of the West, which was also mentioned here, that the West is organizing a revolution in the country, providing financial support to NGOs. So they portray the West as the global war party, as the government invented it. I would say with the sole intention to outweigh direct Russian influence on the state institutions and also inevitable Russian interference in the upcoming elections. That's the purpose of the government. Just briefly more on the political corruption and shadow money, which is the main source of financing in the country in the absence of functional anti-corruption institutions, as I mentioned. Shadow coffers, which is administered by the ruling party and by law enforcement and state security services, is accumulating tens of millions. Especially this amount is doubled and sometimes tripled ahead of elections, and ahead of October elections, we will have the same situation. And they are acting in collaboration with the big businesses, with the criminal schemes and the corrupt deals. So this money which is accumulated in these shadow coffers, which I mentioned, is used not only for bribing voters, but also for bribing officials and disinformation and propaganda. So now the question is, in current situation, which is very unfortunate, and we very much rely on October elections. We very much rely on pro-Western Georgians who we hope that will create the highest turnout on these elections. We very much rely on our international partners. These elections are decisive to bring Georgia back on a democratic track, at least to bring Georgia back to the situation that we had 3-4 years ago, and bring Georgia back on European and Euro-Atlantic track. So in current situation for political parties like us, and I'm going to bring our example, which is neither supported by oligarch or does not rely on corrupt money or does not have its own television, which is also a widespread practice. In Georgia, we very much rely on the social media. These are the tools that we often apply, and we very much rely on in-person communication with the citizens, with the voters, and we are doing in-person meetings throughout the country because regions are most vulnerable because they don't have access compared to the capital, Tbilisi. They don't have access to the social media. They are most vulnerable to propaganda, and we are very actively working in the regions. Also, donations of party members, which was mentioned by colleagues here, we also widely apply, because whenever, let's say, a business person decides to donate, they are immediately approached by state security service. So level of persecution, pressure, intimidation is so high that people refrain actually to officially donate to the party. But I agree that we have to double our efforts, sometimes triple our efforts to operate without any financial support. So what is the solution for the country? For the party, we have some strategies, right? We can somehow tackle this very unfortunate situation. For the country, the solution is building of consensus-based democracy, which will be, in my opinion, inevitable after election. We will have coalition government, building strong institutions which can be resilient to one-party rule and resilient to political changes. We have to end one-party rule in Georgia, which has been a practice not only under the current government, but also under the previous government. For this, we need to protect elections. Well, now there is a question in this authoritarian leadership, how can we protect elections, especially when Russian law targets NGOs and they target media, the last remaining independent instruments, I would say, and guarantees for free and fair elections. So people are left as guarantees. Recent developments in Georgia, you have all seen hundreds of thousands of Georgian citizens have taken to the streets, and they are translating their, I would say, anger. We should translate that anger into the votes. We need highest turnout, and that's the direction we are actively working. We need international support here, and I would like to use this opportunity being here and ask our international partners to support us in this direction. We need to invest more in civic activism, because these people are really willing to show up on the polling stations and protect the results. And also we need long-term international observation missions with a clear mandate to call a spade, because elections are not rigged on election day, even though we have right now, for the first time, government is applying electronic technologies. I'm not doubting the credibility, but what I'm saying is that election rigging is already ongoing. So we need extraordinary instruments to protect elections, and here we need international support. Once again, on behalf of Georgian citizens and on behalf of Georgia, I would like to thank audience here for supporting Georgia's democratic development, and I'm sure after elections we will rapidly catch up with Ukraine and Moldova and gain our place in associated trio again. Thank you very much.